the State University of New Jersey.
So good morning, everyone. I'm going to wait for the slide. Oh, there they are. So depending on where I am and where I wake up in the morning, I can be a health communication person or an expert. I can be a social marketer. I can be a knowledge broker. And today I'm a health communication person. So what I want you to do is to try and communicate to you an idea that's based on science that we apply in the context of health communication and the insights we develop over a long time period that we think can inform the problem, the kind of problems we're trying to deal here and now. But I need you to do something. I need you to, for the next 10 minutes, to stop thinking like a scientist and put yourself in the shoes of the people you're trying to engage. So the word of the day is engagement, if you want to tweet it. And I want to try and take you through that process and hopefully end up with a question for us that I think can move us forward. So in the area of health communication, misinformation is only one problem. We have a much bigger problem to solve, which is we give people really good information, but they don't do what we ask them to do, okay? So in theory, just telling people about the fact that they are at risk and the simple things they can do to protect themselves against the risk should be enough to get them to do something. However, they don't, okay? And part of that is that we try to understand why is it they're not doing what we want them to do. And then I want to propose in the context of health promotion, the definition of what hard to reach mean. It's not a problem of reach. We have many ways of reaching our audiences. It's really difficult to engage. So the problem is engagement. Now, we talked about yesterday, and I think that's kind of speaking to the brilliance of the organizer of this colloquia, because, you know, we have a scaffolding thing. So yesterday we discussed the problem, okay? So why people don't engage? Well, to begin with, we are boring, and we need to acknowledge that. But if you generally try to take systematic research and organize it into some sort of a heuristic that it's very helpful, something I do a lot in my work, is you can have three areas where we were focusing on. One is the issue of capacity. So people lack the capacity to process information, provide, draw conclusion, and use that. And so we want to think about health literacy, for example, as a major area where we want to try and invest. Another area, which we talked about a lot yesterday, is motivation. Okay, lack of motivation has to do with the fact that people do not perceive themselves to be at risk, so they're not motivated to act on that. They have different expectancies. These are beliefs about what would happen if I do something. And this can be a bit misconceived. They lack self-efficacy. They don't believe they can actually do that. You know, quitting smoking is not that easy. Okay, and they don't believe they can do that. And then we talked a lot about motivated reasoning. So I don't want to try and summarize it, just suggest that that's a problem. And then the final one that we kind of talk about, I mean, Vish certainly talked about yesterday, is the notion of lack of opportunities. Not everybody has equal opportunities to access information. Not everybody has access to a social capital, a social network of experts that can help. And we also have distractions. Life happens. When Trump happens, a lot of things happen. So just distract us from, the looking at information. And I would suggest that this is a very useful heuristic capacity, motivation, opportunity to start thinking where the problem is and what solutions we need to produce. It's a very useful heuristic I use in my work a lot. So the next question is, so what do we do about that, right? So we're trying to move, and I think we're going to try to move today towards solutions. Okay, so we know the problem, well documented. What do we do about that? So I want to talk about this continuum, and I want to suggest that there's two things going on here. One of that, if you're looking from your left to the right, that's an evolution that the field of health communication went through in thinking about how we deal with the problem of engagement. And so you have that as a sort of an evolutionary process, but it also remains a continuum that's defined on what is the nature of the problem we're trying to solve. So we're going to talk about 4 different problems. We can define the problem we have as being one of these. And for each one of these, we need to think about the following. What are the explicit or implicit assumptions we make about our audience? What are the assumptions we make about our role? And importantly, what is the potential for unintended effects? Okay, we need to think about these in this context. So the very basic definition or understanding of health communication is that we have a knowledge problem. People just don't know. They're not aware, okay? And so I need to help them understand something better, and for that I work on translation, right? So translational sciences are built on this notion of how do I take a large body of research that's evidence-based and can be very complex, and synthesize that, okay, into a form of tools that can help people make better decisions, okay? Just be aware of things. So we're using things like plain language, we're using translators or brokers, visualizations, we talked about that too. Storytelling is another way of engaging with the audience, or interactive IT tools. Now notice that what the assumptions we make is that the problem we have, our audience is a consumer. So that's how vision of that as a consumer, and that our role is basically a teacher. We're just coming in and educating them, okay? So we're using the tool we know that, or we believe works really, really well, which is educating people about that. The side effects of that are two things. Things like fatigue. We keep telling people what they need to do. They may get tired of that, particularly if they don't think it's relevant to them, and we may be having some problem there. But the other reason is, think about, probably the best way we think we can communicate this information are guidelines, right? It's prescriptions, right? So when I go to have my physical every single year, the same ritual happened to my doctor. I go in, he told me I need to lose weight, and I respond, you need to grow hair. So now we provided prescription to one another, but we didn't really talk about how we actually go and do this, which might be an issue. And part of the problem with prescription is that people depend on this prescription, we kind of deprive them of self-determination. Almost like my kids. I need to tell them what to do, what to eat, and so forth every single day. And that's not where I want to be. I want them to be able to be independent and do that on their own. So we're moving to persuasion. Persuasion focuses on this notion. People are not motivated. The problem is not knowledge. Knowledge is there. It's clear and imminent, okay? It's just they're not motivated to do anything about that. So we need to motivate them, right? And we talked a lot about persuasion. And so persuasion is a way of trying to motivate people, right? By trying to influence their perceptions of risk, by trying to influence their expectancies. What would happen if I do this? And we use a lot of, there's a whole host of things here. And I want to point out, this is science. Communication is a science. It's not an art. It could be an art. But it's really based on a lot of research that go into understanding your audience. And knowing your audience is the most important component of communication. So we can talk about the use of appeals, okay, try to influence people in that way. For example, fear, guilt, and so forth. We can use benchmarking norms. You might have gotten, from your local utility, a bill that just said, you've been consuming more electricity than your neighbor. And that might have an effect on your decision, okay? So we can use communication that way. We can do conditioning, okay? We can create some sort of attribute value to something and push that value as something that's really important. We can frame and prime. There's experts in the room. I'm not going to talk about that. But the way we present information, for example, is gain versus loss, can make a huge difference in how people are motivated. We can correct misperception. We can use compliance gaining strategies, use of authority, use of scarcity, some other things. And we can use persuasive technologies, the devices in your pocket that we can use to influence you, okay, and condition the behavior. And the thing with persuasion is that, again, you assume that the problem is motivation, which is not always the case. It's not that people don't want to be healthy. They want to be healthy, okay? But there's all kinds of barriers, oftentimes objective barriers, for why they cannot enact what exactly you want them to do, okay? And so the next evolution came to this notion that people really have a navigation problem. What people really need is not a science that tells them what they should do and why they should do it, because they kind of know that, quite intuitively. What they need is somebody who can help them navigate. So we have challenges every day, okay? Feeding your children, we all know 5 a day, 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Anybody try to feed the children 5 fruits and vegetables a day? Great. I didn't actually meet any physician or a scientist who told me how to do that. I met a parent who can do that, and I'll tell you later why this is really important. So part of the issue here with coaching, so again, notice here that the assumption here is that these are not people who are consumers or people who are unmotivated. The assumption is that these people who need help, they need to know how to do this. Don't tell me what to do, show me how. So we're going into coaching, and so we can help people with goal setting, we can help them with decision aids and maps, we use it a lot of in a medical setting. We can give them feedback, we can give them benchmarks to know how well they're doing, okay? So, MyFitnessPal, all the stuff that we can design. We can connect them with social support and advice, so they can go through and answer questions. So if I'm getting treated for cancer, I care about the cancer, but I'm also losing my hair. And what do I do about that? And my physician doesn't have this information for me. I need to connect them with other people because that's important to navigating and coping with the disease. And then we have something called motivational interviewing, which is we helping people to figure out what is the real issue that they have. I don't have time. That's the most common thing. Well, let's work on that. Let's see, okay? What happened in health is realize that's fine. It doesn't always work, okay, because people feel like they're being disempowered. Okay, I set the goals for them, and they still have to go through. So we move into partnership model. That's an institutionalized model, as you know. We have PCORI, we have other things. We move into patient-centered care, and this notion is how do we build partnership or relationship with people, and so that kind of very exciting part that's happening right now. And we talk about things like co-learning and co-designs, and RPPs are part of that. Okay. We talk about shared decision making. Again, empowering the patients to make their own decision, and my job is to really help them figure out the alternatives, but it's ultimately their decision to be made. Think about collaboration. We talk about how we get people to participate in clinical trials and help us figure out solutions to all kinds of problems. Give them access to data, their records, other records, so they can do that themselves. And then building this idea of transparency and trust, okay, between the health promotion side, and as also a way of fighting information and misinformation. Academy Health just recently announced the new science of engagement science. Okay, we have a new science. We have recruitment science. We have engagement science. We have a lot of sciences that has to do with the same thing, which is essentially how do we build a relationship. And the idea here is very simple, is that we need to do a better job building a relationship with the people we try to serve, okay? So we need to be attentive to their ideas, the goals, the needs, and do a better job connecting with them and bringing them in and participate. And so we're moving from a deficit model into an engagement model. And so immediately we can think about science communication can play a very important role here in terms of, for example, defining what engagement is. What is engagement? How do I engage? What conditions can support engagement? All these are very important questions that we can have a conversation with the science, and we're kind of ready to have that. We don't have to wait and go through the same exact evolution. What I want to suggest, and that's why I want to end and get you to think about, is that all that stuff means that patients have to change, but I want to suggest that we are the one who need to change. Because that's part of the deal. I cannot ask you to change if I don't change myself. So it's not about engagement science, how do we get to be engaged science? So the question is, how do we build relationships with the public, okay? And most importantly is, how do we build engagement in our daily routines? So I'm just gonna, since I asked the question, I feel like I need to answer or give you some sort of ideas. So here's some 3 ideas. Number 1, all of us, many of us teach. There's an opportunity for you to use science in your classes around solving a problem. If you teach students the value of using science to solve everyday problem that they care about, there's an opportunity there to educate them about the value of science and how they can solve a problem with science. So I'd engage them in a real important way as opposed to just talking about science. The other one is, you don't have to do the relationship. You have to find somebody who has a relationship with your audience. These are intermediaries or brokers. And I work a lot with community organization. That particular image here is taken from a town hall meeting. I do a lot of work on opioid addiction. And we have town hall meeting in every single county in New Jersey where we invite people to come and talk to us, the scientists, about what their concerns are, what they want to know that we didn't answer. For example, around treatment and recovery and some other issues. And most importantly, I will talk about unintended effects. The biggest unintended effects of engaging in this way as an engaged scholar every single day with people in your community locally, local news, locally is really important, is that you run the risk that you're going to learn something new, that you're going to find out something you didn't know. I didn't say unintended effects have to be negative. Okay, so one of the things we did there, and I invite you to check my website, is we collected best practices from these communities. We didn't tell them what the best practice is to solve opioid addiction. They solved the problem. We just collected it as scientists, and we communicate that to the other community. So I invite you to look at that and think about together about how we build relationships. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Itzhak.